Thank you, Sebastian. I call you Sebastian. It's easier for me. And first of all, I want to thank you, Professor Tom Chen, and all your team and your colleagues for this magnificent organization. And so you have been so caring about us that I'm amazed. I'm really amazed. And in this perfect and caring organization, we had three of us had a one-day trip to, yes, to Taichung Fine Art Museum. I'm coming here. And well, there was an exhibition of Yen Shulan, and this assertion struck me because, well, I knew, and it's something that I have always in my mind. Presenting product features, performance structures, or usage through illustrations helps maintain accuracy and enhances comprehension compared to textual descriptions. Why? Because this assertion explains the prevalence of image power over text. Why? Speed. You know, well, I'm not a medical doctor, you already have understood, and but the human brain can process an image in just 13 milliseconds. That's, well, just something like that, you say. And just to stress the importance of how we represent space. And so speaking about architecture and of the importance, no, sorry, I was just, well, just to go on speaking about the importance of representation of space and how people who are not specialists, I mean, have the perception of space. Let me share a recent experience I had in Rome. I had to show some young priests the Roman structure of a bath, which are in the building they live in. They didn't know that their building concealed Roman structures pertaining to a public bath, like a spa. And so I had a conference, I gave a talk, and then I accompanied them in the building from the basement to the first floor to show what they had inside. And I prepared well, a plan and a 3D reconstruction. And I was expecting that the plan would be their reference image. No, they disregarded totally the plan, and they went directly to the 3D reconstruction, and they well located themselves. And well, I must say it was a surprise, but it speaks about the non-specialist have the perception of space. Yes, this big arc is here, and they really locate themselves here at the foot of the arc. And well, this is to go back some centuries to explain how long or short has been our journey, our route to metaverse space representation. This is a section of a map of Rome. And it's a map, and it pertains to the 16th century. It was the first plan we had, the orthogonal layout of the city that we have since Roman times. From the 3rd century AD, we skip all those centuries without any plan, any map of the city. So it's a very important moment, this one. But well, and we would think that after this, which you understand it's not a perfect map, we would go on focusing the way to represent the city on a map. But it was not like that. People wouldn't feel in the space of the city, in the map. And so we have almost 2 centuries of bird's eye view. That is our 3D reconstruction. It's our step to metaverse. And so people located easily themselves in front of the Pantheon. This is the 3D current reconstruction of the Pantheon. You can see, well, church and the ruins of the Agrippa's bath, the Roman bath that I spoke to you before. And again, we have other bird's eye view, changing point of view, changing orientation, but I stress that maps were totally forgotten. We had to wait 2 centuries to have another map. And this is a perfect orthogonal map by Giovanni Pissanoli, but it's 1748. And it was the first step for a cadastral map. So it's very important for us. Again, Rome, you can see, well, the Pantheon, the Agrippa's bath are here. But we had not only bird's eye view, focusing on one historical building we had sketched, and going to the actual axonometrical representation of 2 temples here. And but what was the problem? Not for the specialists, which are well accustomed to read such a type of representation of space, but for general public, it's not so easy, I've seen, because we have the 3 dimensions squeezed only on one plane. And the squeezing give people a less easy perception of space. And let's reach the actuality. Well, we have the acceleration of development of technology, and this was a real help in the pandemics. And speaking of health and humanities, well, we had here in a current project in Italy that originated from the intention, the way to promote the social inclusion of people with mental health fragilities. And it's called luoghi comuni, that's common places. Because they, well, the people who present, who applied for the project and were funded, were thought that humanities could really help in mental fragilities. And I call it museum therapy. We are accustomed to hear pet therapy. It's very common in Italy, the pet therapy, but well, we are going to have a museum therapy. It's a project which is going on. And yes, the pandemic got us in a moment where the advance of technology was already ahead. And so, as we've seen, it helped us very much. But the technology alone, it's not enough. What common people, how common people reacted to pandemics and how they were helped by the advance of technology. Well, the people change, and people change. I am a humanist, and I'm from Sage, so you can understand how I felt the problem. I am a witness of how the people uh, had time to waste or to think better because people had time on their hands. And, we are always in a rush. We were always in a rush. And as in my familiar occasion, I learned to appreciate time again, to appreciate faith, really here and now. And it's very important. I made a change. And even if I went on teaching, as every one of us, and so on. But common people could not move, and they started to reconsider humanities. We used to of it yesterday, Louis, and it's true. But they not only they read more books, but they they were keen to understand history. Yes, to know history. What happened, and why? Because the humanities also the exercise of thoughts. We humanists need the collaboration with hard scientists. It's sure, but our thoughts, everybody's thought, is enhanced by humanities, and political, social, economic reasons pushed the heritage institution to offer people virtual tours of museum, archives, libraries, historical sites. People could not move but wanted to go out. It's like, I don't know if you know something of the city of Pompeii. You know this Roman city which was overwhelmed by the boost of Vesuvius, of a volcano, and people wanted to go out of their the people who lived in Pompeii and had a small house wanted to have a garden, something representing the open space. They couldn't, so they painted a garden on the walls. So it was the same thing. I'm going ahead. So the advance of technology brought us to the representation of historical spaces. And I know that gaming, helped the technology for the reconstruction very much. But it's gaming or reliability. This is the Circus Maximus experience, and well, enhanced by augmented reality, virtual reality. But is it reliable? And this is, I'm going on, yes. And this is the problem. This is another example. It had just opened in Rome, in the center of Rome, an archaeological site which has the representation of virtual reality of what was found. But the virtual reality of this portico of the Minucci has been prepared after years of research and investigation and excavations. So this is the reconstruction, and we have reconstructed in Rome only these two columns of all the temples. And but augmented reality, virtual reality are not enough for us now. And technology has taken us into a different space. With the help of mixed reality, with the help of the implementations which artificial intelligence can give us. And so we reach the beginning of the metaverse. The metaverse let us interact. We are not only put into the historical space as in the virtual reality. We can reach the roof. We can focus closer some detail here. We can walk and touch the walls. What do you? I'm going on. It's my almost. I'm closing. So you move into the metaverse, but with the avatars. Are we avatars? And so this is to explain the first slide. Are we avatars? Have we calculated risk for the big heritage? I understand the importance of metaverse in medicine, yes. We've just seen with David Goldberg presentation yesterday too. But for the big heritage, it can be a problem. The tangible space in which the big heritage is integrated is the connective tissue of our life. Its history, and reflecting on how it can become in the digital world. Are we prepared to face this new space? Will we be able to manage it? That is important, to manage, and not to be submitted by this new type of representation of this new space, which is a shared synthetic environment, and which is so far from Protagoras saying, man is the measure of all things. And we have had here the Vitruvius man drawn by Leonardo. This is the symbol of man is the measure of all things. And I leave you, I close in a philosophical way with doubts. A question mark. Thank you.
Brilliant editing. And thank you also for the brilliant statement. I'm afraid behind the schedule. Let us move on at once. Our next speaker will be Professor Fu Yuanshi, Fu Yuan who is a prominent practicing medical doctor and also a very scholar and educator. The theme of Professor Shi's presentation will be ethics, continuous framework to care of emerging infectious diseases. Please, Professor Shi.
Good. Good evening, gentlemen, friends, and ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It's my great honor to be here to present a very I think a very deep cut issue for me. We are talking about something about ethics in emergency infectious disease, and Professor Chen gave me metaverse. It's a new word to me, so I spent several weeks to understand what does that mean. And I think for me, I have to say I'm not an expert in ethics. I also am not expert in metaverse. But as a first-time emergency physician, and my job is to practice medicine in austere conditions, for example, air crash, earthquake, and the train accident. In such kind of field, and we have to practice medicine during resuscitation without any emotion. Okay, so myself, we said we are like a butcher lamb. Okay, we kill people, and if as a joke, we emergency physician, we talk to my friends and I ask which kind of death do you prefer? The first is death with intubation, and the death without intubation. And my friend said, can I choose not death? Okay, it's very difficult. For me, okay, today I'm not going to talking about some very serious theory, but for me, I think in year 2003 is a very painful experience for myself, because at the time there's a neighborhood hospital, we call Hoping Hospital. They are shut down because illness spreads. And later the patients move out to our emergency room, and so my emergency room was also closed. For the first time, my hospital running their emergency room since 1963, and after 40 years, the first time they were shut down. And many of the colleagues was put in quarantine. The first day I was not quarantined because they think I was not exposed, so I can go everywhere. And one day I got a phone call. My department director wanted me to go into the emergency room. They are closed, but because the one patient there died, they need some emergency physician to sign a death certificate, because I was escaped from the quarantine, so I want to sign the job. And I went there. The whole operation room was empty. The lights goes out. Just only several lights from the exit side, and a dead body there with the ventilator is behind him, and the ventilator still works. It's very lovely. The first moment I understand the pipeline was leaked, so the patient cannot get any air, so he died. Okay, I was shocked because the patient did not have any family, because the patient was moved out from the other hospital, and the hospital was shut down, and the family member of this patient was also put in quarantine, so no one beside him. So I cannot imagine in a modern city, in a medical center, patients dying a closed emergency room without any light, without any family members beside. So it's a very, very terrible thing. But okay, and I get a phone call that I was put in quarantine again, so I disappeared. So I do not follow the situation, but it was became a stereotype nightmare in my life. My nightmare, we have 3 times this one is the first, and the hospital caught fire the second, and my neighbor's dog sneaked into my garden and destroyed my plants the third. So just my nightmare just only 3 times. So I was very angry why the hospital said refer their patients, critical ill patients, without any notice in this critical situation. And several months later, after everything finished, and I talked with my friends. He worked in the hospital, and I told the story, and he told me another story. Okay, because they are all coming back to the hospital, staying there, living there, sleeping there. So in his office, seven doctors lying on the floor every day. Okay, the first moment I think because everything are so difficult, so transport a patient without any notice and no arrangement, I think it's okay. So, and several years later, I attend a medical seminar talking about the critical care medicine. Some experts talking about why the virus, the coronavirus, became so terrible. Because in the beginning, we did not lose any patients, but when the hospital was closed and a lot of people dying in ICU. So they're talking about their genetic trait or mutation or something. They are different kind of story. In coffee break, my classmate, we are in medical college, my classmate told me there's not any difficult story, but the story we cannot tell, because the patients was dying of pneumothorax, very, very simple illness, and just take an estimate, intern can treat the patient quite well. But why we did not do that? Because the patients get intubated and use ventilator, we need to give them enough tidal volume, enough oxygen and air, but the lung became more stiff, and we did not practice good airway hygiene. So the pressure became higher and higher and higher. But later, the lung blow up, and then the air leak out, and the patients cannot get breathing, and then die. Even in ICU, we just go into the room for 3 times every day. So if it occurred during our visit, the patients died. It was very simple, not because of genetic mutation or something, but later, later a lot of theory about that. But for the in charge doctors in the world, they know what happened, but we never said it because it's too suffering. We do not want to remember that. So for every time during disaster, we think we saw that pictures, we have a bird view for all the things, but it's not the truth. We work separated. So even at the end of the event, we just integrate many pieces into one thing. But during emergency infectious disease, we cannot work together. We cannot talk, we cannot discuss. We just work separated. In COVID-19, we have more internet conference on the more mobile phone. In SARS, we just use PDA. We do not have mobile phone. So it's very hard to communicate. So what you think about the truth is just only part of the truth. Okay, so for me, I think we usually overestimate what we know. We know all the truth just at the end of events, but have to respond from the beginning. So the first moment I was called to the scene, I made a lot of decisions, and after we finish the job, people will say, okay, you made a wrong decision, but for the first moment, we do not know the truth. And till now, I think, unfortunately, we do not know what we do not know most of the time, even at the end, because we know what we know, and we know something we did not know. But actually, we do not know what we do not know. Okay, and that part was very huge. It was very, very terrible. So I think everyone should be humble in such kind of situation. Okay, I would want to mention some of the very critical situation. The limitation of resources was a great challenge. So in car instance, we have to decide because my ambulance has one space for different patients. I have to choose one to take care of that. For people with minor injury, we do not have to take care of them because they can survive. For badly damaged, injured, we do not take care of them because they do not have chance to survive. But for people that have better chance to survive, we chose them. We call this is triage. In COVID-19, I think every country, every community, every hospital, every ward has such kind of situation. We just have only one ICU bed, but we have 3 patients with need intubation, which patients to get it, and then we have to move out to upgrade. So it's very, very difficult for us to choose. So I think for ethics, we have a very simple model we call trolley problems. There's a long way trolley bearing down the railway track. On the track, there are 5 people tied up and unable to move. There, you are standing some distance up in the train yard next to a table. If you pull this table, the trolley will switch to a different set of track. There is 1 person on this side, so you have to carry 2 of you. Do not say, or pull the table, diverting the trolley onto the side of track where it will kill 1 person. What is the right thing to do? I think most of the people, they will choose to kill this one and then save the other five. This we call triage. I think for medical training, we do a lot of such kind of things. But when you do the same decision in the foreign situation, the first one, when one of your family member or friends was out of track, will you choose to kill this one? If this one is your family member, will you is your friends? The second, when you know someone's name on one track, it's called them Jimmy or something else. If you know him, will you still want to kill him or her? The third, when someone was quite special, for example, pregnant, young children, or social celebrity, anything, will you do the same thing? Okay, I think it was not so easy to do that. For example, in the beginning, we just only have a very scanty vaccine. Only several people can get vaccinated. The others cannot do that. So they are priority, the first 1 to 10, and the first one is medical personnel. I was the, the first, and the central and the local government for infection control personnel, the first-line workers. The first three, I think, because we are decision maker, so we chose we are the first priority. My friends work in as a Uber Eats driver. He was after the 10, but he was very important because I said when I was quarantined, you have to send food to me, but he said I cannot get vaccinated. So most of the population that contributed to our daily life was not included in what we think the most important. The second, I think the identifiable factor effect, the likelihood that we build greater empathy and an urge to help in situations where tragedies are about the specific identifiable individuals compared to the situation where the victims are a large wage group of people. So you are more likely to be motivated to help Jimmy, a single individual who is starving, than the other 26 million children. It was clear, but it's truth. So during the situation, I think there's an event, some small child, they died because of their parents follow the protocols, but it's too strict. The protocol did not have an emergency exit for any patients with special needs. So the young child died. In this country, a lot of people died. People did not say that, but the young children died. People are very emotional, irritated. So our brain's tendency to feel great compassion for individuals, but indifference for groups of individuals. So we need better decision making during crisis through brain science. And for the other part, for example, the impact of different business are different. We've got economic loss. For most of the people, the overall economic loss is very small, but for special kind, it's huge. We do not know where is the starvation line. So output for the overall, we think is okay, but actually maybe it's not okay. So the labor workers cannot work from home. We government employees, we physicians, we can work from home, just only decrease my income a little bit. But for the workers, they cannot work from home. They do not go to work. They do not earn any money. They have to get stuff. And the stigma to certain community and the populations, I think some cases went to Northern Temple and the Wanghua area. That place was very stigmatized during the outbreak, and usually it will last for maybe decades. It was terrible. So widespread use of contact tracing, and I think witch counting is quite common in social media. Everyone's social contact history was exposed on the news media, people talking to each other, who meet someone and who are their sons, their daughters, their fathers-in-law, something. And also witch hunting everywhere. So when I saw some celebrity took off their face mask, and I take pictures and share it on the Facebook, social media, and everyone became victims of witch hunting. So everyone could become victims of terror. I think we also that, but in such kind of situation, we encourage people to snitch, to point out your friends or something. I think it's a very terrible feeling. And finally, I think a single death is a tragedy. A millions of deaths is a statistics. It was told by Joseph Stalin, maybe not like him, but for we epidemiologists or we physicians, we like to use statistics. One day, this year, I went to Lithuania. I visited a concentration camp, and they told me there are 50,000 people killed during World War II. I think it's just a number because I know 60 millions of Jewish people was killed at the time. But when I go into I face the war, there's built up a lot of buttons. Every button means victims, their clothes, and the decoration is on the wall. So it's not just a number, it's a real life, family member, something. So every time when I have to use the number, the statistics, I will tell myself, remember the button. Every button, there's a single life. We cannot sacrifice any one of them. Okay, so we are on the crossroad from human development, economy, public health, isolated innovation, prosperity, freedom, convenience, privacy, and the security, collectivism, restriction, surveillance, which way to choice. I think we are on the crossroad. So finally, I think that was not the best thing for COVID-19 because we are forced to think of that. And the more amendments, the more we see is ignorance. And finally, I want to show my calculated work. The word says if the heavens do not have snow or frost, we do not value, and we do not know the true value of a pine tree. We will think is less value than a grass or any ordinary plants. If there's no mountains, no rivers, we do not. If we have a broad and straight road, is a wonderful thing. So I think COVID-19 told us if we can meet our friends, have dinner with others, go any place to visit, it's a very wonderful thing. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much too. I think a very profound lesson on the ethics of medicine, healthcare. And I like your calligraphy especially. Did you write that poem too? Did you write the poem too?
No.
Yes?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next, we'll have the master brain of this whole event, Professor Xiu Chen. He's currently professor of at the Institute of Health Data Analytics and Statistics at National Taiwan University. He's also director of the Institute of Epidemiology and Preventive Medicine. He will be speaking on humanities in metaverse care for emerging infectious disease.
Yeah, thank you so much for the for the 邀请，好院长啊。Yesterday I'm talking about ancient metaverse, but today because the topic is the emerging infectious disease, so I would like to focus on future metaverse because the thinking will be predictions. If you can predict well, then the virtual world and the physical world you can interact very well. So I think this is what I try to do. And again, I give you a movie, Upgrade. Now I think Luis wants to express and I want to share me. So how can you get that? Because he is forced to put in the chips inside bodies. Then you will have two persons, gray and same. And then you create physical world and virtual world. Then, of course, because he interact with the physical world and virtual world, so he can see his betrayed friend kill his girlfriend. And so this is a story. And finally, Stan win the body control. And the real person, Gray, live in the mind with his wife. This is a story, scares you. Important sense is, how can you do that? So this trend has also come to the neural talk and try to help the disabled persons, vulnerable populations. I think it's good, but today for EID, different. We have to know, we have to predict. This is different things. So when we talk about metaverse, I mean, the subject is very broad, I know. So in healthcare, you have so many virtual hospitals right now. Then until we are very interested in digital twin because they can do many things about the avatar. Louis just showed even in the cultures. Education, not to mention diagnosis, risk prediction, so many things to do. You see, so in the end, there are 5 domains: personal digital, IoT, and machine learning, robotics, and blockchain. So these things, but again, you face with the EID. These ethicals come back again. Individual liberties, then the harm principles. People don't like this, I know, like me, has no interest. But this is for infectious disease control, for protect public health. And also a quarantine and isolation, we don't like it again. But we can do some things to offset. So this reciprocal and empathy is very important things. And very important proportional principles. That's why the David already talked about the pseudonymy. I like it because false negative in the infection control could cause outbreak. But again, false positive is caused labeling effect like HIV. So this is very different. In medical care, we call this is precision medicine, precision healthcare, different language. So privacy principles, talking about GPS, APP during the COVID-19, we've already done that. Not bad, but it's enough. When you talking about more about antibody test vaccinations, the primary protections is very important because people don't want to expose the data. The blockchain is one of the solutions I know. And also, it's sent to the international ETA Travel Pass Initiative. So, all these problems, David already pointed out, I don't need mention again. When you have a real world, there's so many problems here. And you have a data, you use the deny, the AI, everything. But when you have you get justice? This is what I'm trying to convey and convey the message. So this is called, David just showed very good segregation, racial segregation. This is all, if AI can you solve that? It's still, the problem is still there. So one of the things I want to share with you is, if you make a wrong clinical decision making, it's very worse. I show you examples. Remember, with Desmia, when we have outbreak, we don't have vaccines. The MPI, people don't die. When Desmia become, the antivirus become panacea. So we cannot do randomized trial. So let's call the compassion use. And because I'm a statistician, I use these 53 people. This is the data actually. Of course, I create the digital twin generally control because there is no control. Why I need to do that? Because I know if I can do very quickly about the model, then I really can create the digital tool control. Then we can evaluate. We don't need a randomized control. And I did it. And I find, regardless of the days or the recorders, all significant. Today, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I submit to New England Journal of Medicine 175 word only letters for this result. I wait for the 3 months, finally rejected. Because I just revised these letters. These letters. Not because I know this is very urgent. So I tried to say, maybe, because this is, if you look at the data, this is the real data. After they do the RCT, this is not significant. Just because the statistician say this is only 1.1 or 1.2, so they don't take it. So if we know earlier how many days can be avoided, because the guideline after 2 years has been used for redemption for early COVID-19. Very safe, very, very safe. So this is we call the humanities. So I totally agree with Chairman say, post-humanians, post-modernian. I mean, we know we can use the digital twin control, real persons. We have very good AI, but this is a virtual world. Different strategies, every strategy for different persons. We can choose, but this is all human, envisage. How about this is not non-human envisage? How about human, the feeling? So the postmodern, the post-humanian is already told us, this is we know these pictures. I have done digital twin for at least, the one antivirus software. Immediately I can get answers. But, people still cannot accept that. So, this is, I think, why I'm talking about the, yesterday talking about this kind of the media metaverse. But fortunately, I tell you, today, the large language model try to fill this gap. Yeah, we are going to see that, So the 3 families, OpenChatGPT, all of them we use them. The Facebook Metas create a Llama, and this is particular for Google for the Palm for medical use. Very useful, very, very useful. You see, and this is chatbot. This is very famous metformin for diabetes, and they give a wrong promise, and they can set correct because this is in the NEJM papers. It's not from me. So the large language model adapt to I think adapt to EIT because we can virtual nurse, clinical notes, predicting COVID-19 disease and advanced events, side effect and vaccine side effect detection, everything. You can think about this is our future, and even the medical pump. I think is very useful. Physician and also patient can have interactions. And this is one example talking about the medical pump used in the check X-ray. And this is very, I think it's very beautiful. So finally, although we have such kind of the evolutions, we still need to consider of this, ethical challenge about the all. I don't go into detail. I think everyone know that, and that's why I like Louisa say the synthetical environment. It's not only the environment. It's not the people. It's not architecture. It's not how we interact. Otherwise, people don't query this. And what is the purpose of architecture? So tomorrow we are going to do because human and animal and the ecosystem, we have one health. But if you want to do very powerful about the things I just mentioned, we still need findable, accessible. David and I, we emphasize on interoperable and reusable, ethical and reversible. And we call it fair ER. And this is actually the WHO right now proposed for the pandemic agreement. So I think this is very short, but I want to share and also echo the chairman, the challenge for the post-humanities. I totally support you, and then let us, find way, to make the metaverse even feasible, beneficial, equitable, inclusive, but sustainable, and also cover the humanities science. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this really kind introduction, and a great thanks for all the fantastic organization and for Professor Tony and for all his team, because it's amazing here. It's my first time in Taiwan, but I really seriously hope that not the last one. So thank you again for this. And if you allow me, I will read my presentation because in this way we can all be sure that I fit within the allocated time frame. So sorry for reading, but this is a kind of guarantee. So, besides all the terrible events, tragic loss of life, serious problems in healthcare systems, economic difficulties, social political tensions, and psychological challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic had another consequences as well. We may not think of it as first, but it also had an impact on arts and aesthetics, broadly construed, including the art world and its infrastructure. And not only, also the modes of perception and enjoying art. We could perhaps say that the pandemic had inevitably involved all of us in a global experiment in encountering many novel features in the working of art. Therefore, in the following, I would like to see some aspects in this whole process, focusing especially on what we can apprehend from this recent shared experience that could be helpful for a better understanding of the current state and role of art and culture in our contemporary world. From an art historical and theoretical point of view, the COVID-19 pandemic was extremely important for many new insights regarding how culture in general and art in particular can function. Nevertheless, we shall not forget that it was not the first time that devastating health conditions influenced both the subject matters and the production of art or artworks. Just to quote one of the best-known classical references, the Boccaccio's collection of short stories. Here it is. The Decameron from the 14th century, and is the Great Plague, in which a group of 7 women and 3 men escaped from Florence because of the disease, and then they tell stories to each other at a time. In a nice miniature kept in the Bodleian Library in Oxford, we can see the characters while gathering for their storytelling session. Of course, we can also find examples from later period on how other illnesses and pandemics have appeared as a subject matter. For example, in the work of Edvard Munch, him sitting in an armchair, his face almost the same color as the wall behind him, highlighting the main features of his portrait only through a few additional brush strokes, thus increasing the strong aesthetic effect of the work. In these two works that I chose almost randomly from different eras and thematizing different illnesses, we can observe how the motif of pandemics influence the choice of subject matter. However, what is, or what was, the novelty regarding the effects of the COVID-19 on the art world is that it didn't only become a subject matter for pieces of art or a condition in which artists tried to continue working, but it had fundamentally influenced also the modes of consumption of art for a longer period and on a global scale. This is the aspect I would like to investigate here further. So let's start what happened in the beginning of the pandemics. In the beginning, we all had the shock of the event. As remember, one of the most surprising elements was the complete insecurity how long this may take. Would the virus and the quarantine and lockdown stay with us only for a few days or weeks or months? This has definitely made it even more complicated to react in all sectors of culture. Right from the beginning, the virus had fundamentally changed the way the artists work and the way they can work, how they show their creation or perform pieces of art. Just think of how much the basic aspects of the creative process change only through the fact that an artist cannot access her studio in case there is a lockdown or home quarantine. The larger or non-specialized public may overlook details like this, but it can be crucial if an artist doesn't have the opportunity to work from home, for example, because there are too many disturbing elements, or she is using dangerous materials and processes, or simply if the artist is accustomed to have large spaces. It is enough to remember the renowned German contemporary artist Anselm Kiefer and his impressive studio in France, recorded also in Wim Wenders' recent documentary movie on the artist. Kiefer has a hangar-sized studio that is so huge that he can even take a bicycle to go from one work to another. And we have to add to all this that art supply stores were also closed, just like bronze foundries or print studios for the creation of multiplied graphic works, and they were all inaccessible for those wanting to use them. So let's go to the second part, during the months of the pandemic. As mentioned above, one of the main difficulties for all, including the artists, obviously was to get used to the idea that the duration of the pandemics is indefinite. It is much easier to endure something difficult when we know how long it will take, but getting used to the idea that we don't know is much more challenging. We all had to embrace the open-endedness of the situation. Surprisingly, however, this could even become something inspirational for many artists. In other words, they successfully managed to channel this challenging state towards creative forces. One of the obvious solutions for this was that the creators chose to proceed working on something on a smaller scale that they could execute in home, in restrained circumstances. As a distant parallel, we can say that artists had to find creative solutions just like sportsmen and sportswomen needed to invent something to stay fit and practice. We can remember, for example, a professional swimmer's solution of training in her kitchen, or a marathon runner who completed the whole distance in his 7-meter-long balcony. For artists, such restrictions could mean working on at least concepts or hence developing plans and sketches for future works to be executed when facilities are again accessible. It is also interesting to see how all this could be converted as a form of therapy and self-help, exactly to endure the difficulties in the indefinite nature of the lockdown. For such therapeutical creativity and research of novel ways of doing art, often with subtle humor, I can show the Serbian photographer Una Laurencic and her series Diary from the Quarantine, that we found so convincing that we also featured her work in the second volume of the Humanities, Arts and Society magazine that is almost published with the collaboration of Sipsh and Bell. So staying at home during the quarantine and trying to combine yoga and art. There's another work from the same series. Of course, all this is not just about the actual production of works. With venues closed, artists soon turned to digital spaces for presenting. Facebook pages, Instagram posts, and other social media platforms started to get filled with works created at home under the quarantine. Another curious aspect that I would like to mention here was the desire to find such alternative forms of getting engaged with art and creativity, combined with the therapeutical strengths of regularly and self-motivational. And this inspired not only artists but also theoreticians who also use the possibility of digital platforms. Just as one example, let me mention the project by the philosopher of art Gisela Horvath, who started to write brief analysis, like short reflections on different pieces of art, uploading one on Facebook every day. The project was so successful that after the end of the first quarantine, so still back in 2020, she published them in a book with a QR code referring to the image. This is an interesting example of how digital technology can combine with traditional book publication and how there is not necessarily only a one-way direction from one to the other, so like from paper-based to digital, but it can also be the other way around. I will come back to this later. But before that, however, let's see a bit more in detail what else had happened during the months of the lockdowns with the possibilities of presenting and enjoying art remotely. Right from the beginning of lockdowns, obviously the museums, commercial galleries, art fairs and festivals and biennials were closed and future events cancelled. This had caused serious financial difficulties for practically everyone in the art world and in the art business. But many exhibitions venues reacted quite quickly, coming up with innovative solutions of nevertheless offering cultural experiences to the visitors that did not or could not have the possibility to go there physically. Galleries, for example, opened online exhibitions. Now, it is important to see that this does not simply mean putting on their website the work of the artists whom they anyway represent. That already existed before. What had, however, become more common is to properly curate a new show in the virtual sphere. It provided curators, art historians, or even artists themselves with the possibility to realize online exhibitions based on, for example, a specific topic. It was actually quite revelatory and experimental for many curators because they could truly experiment with ideas and even novel solutions that would have otherwise been way more difficult and costly to try in the real world. Just an example of a project in which I was also partly involved is to illustrate the internationality of these initiatives. An Iranian artist friend of mine who lives in the United Arab Emirates curated an online show in 2020 in the online platform of Richard Koch Fine Arts Gallery. That's a gallery with physical spaces in Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. And the exhibition featured artists from Malaysia, Denmark, the US, Syria, and Ukraine, and of course, a Hungarian art historian writing one of the essays. Yeah. So you can imagine how much would it have cost in the real life to bring all these people together and their works. So we can just say that right from the beginning, there was a strong desire to find innovative solutions to how to nevertheless provide access to cultural content to those who are interested in art and who are locked in home quarantines. Concerning the non-profit aspects, not only public museums, but also many commercial galleries and art fairs realize that besides the virtual exhibitions and online viewing platforms, people are interested in other non-commercial collateral elements too, of which the main purpose was dialogue, education, or dissemination of knowledge. Therefore, there were many presentations, roundtables, discussions, and readings organized by even for-profit galleries or commercial entities. Here I'm quoting, for example, the Global Art Forum that was put online. So this is the global discussion platform of the art fair in Dubai. Another curious aspect is that despite the virtual nature of all these events, they nevertheless had an impact on the physical encounters with art, both in the months of the lockdowns and after. People were then at home getting a lot of possibilities to learn more about art. This is also what Louis explained to us yesterday. And also the option of enjoying art from a distance, for example, through broadcasted concerts that the musicians played in an empty concert hall. Nevertheless, as one of the artist friends of mine told me, several galleries reported increased sales during the month of the COVID. And this might be surprising in the beginning. And it's almost paradoxical, but the reason is more simple than that. Many collectors chose to move from the crowded cities to their second home, for example, in the countryside or in the seashore or in a private island if they had one. And they realized that the walls of these second homes that they normally use only for a few days or long weekends in the year, they are rather empty. So they started to spend more time in these homes, and they also started to spend more money on decorating these homes. And so this, however, proves that people were and are thirsty of real art encounters and encountering real art. And this also explains the success of those initiatives or alternative initiatives that certain museums took in those months, of which solution of the most, in these months, of which solution one of the most discussed and boldest was the one by the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. When the Omicron variant started to spread in December 2021, the Dutch government, announced that museums and cultural institutes had to remain closed, while gyms, hairdressers, and beauty centers may open. So this is why the Van Gogh Museum, as a form of protest, established ad hoc beauty stands, like nail polish tables, within its exhibition spaces, so that people with the excuse of getting an aesthetic treatment would have the possibility to get other type of aesthetic experiences as well. Similar artistic experiences were offered for those who were passionate about classical music and having a haircut while being at the Concertgebouw orchestra rehearsing, because they were also then. So this is how we arrive to the last section of my paper regarding what's happening after the pandemics. When trying to understand what has changed after the COVID experience and how the perception and conception of art has changed, we thus need to constantly take into consideration that despite the creative online solution, there is something irreplaceable or unsubstitutable in art. Many people, both the specialists and from the larger public, thought or even feared in the beginning of the post-COVID era that the physical appreciation will not come back at all, or that people will get too much used to consuming art only online. This has, however, not become so. We all realize again that artworks you need to enjoy in their real physicality, unless they are digital artworks, of course. It is almost paradoxical, or at least funny, that right before the pandemics, many from the art industry started to talk about fair peak. So much so that in the late 2018, the concept was elected by the ArtNet magazine among the 13 terms that changed the art world in the decade. Someone defined it so as an existential state of exhaustion brought on by attending or exhibiting in too many art fairs. Fatigue has afflicted members of the art world for far less time than art fairs have existed, as the condition didn't develop until the fair sector exploded in scale and global reach after 2005. Obviously, the art professionals had ample time to rest from fatigue during COVID-19 pandemics, and by now the game is again on, just like tourism, including cultural tourism, blockbuster shows in museums and heritage site visits are truly flourishing. Needless to say, these questions have also a lot to do with issues of ethics, for example, ethical traveling and sustainability, namely whether art patronage, collecting, or simply enjoying art is a sufficient justification for the environmental consequences of traveling, especially considering the many high net worth individuals going to fairs and buying theirs in private jets. Hence, this is how we arrive again to the complex issue that even if we have come up with many inspiring solutions to shift real-world art habits to virtual spaces, there is nevertheless the allure of the real. It may have to do with Walter Benjamin's famous claims regarding the aura, the special hic et nunc of the actual real piece that cannot be imitated or reconstructed. So digitalization and virtual exhibition can have great advantages, but they are not absolute and automatic solutions. In certain ways, they have many advantages, for example, being able to observe details that otherwise is really more difficult to see in real, like in the case of the Mona Lisa, or smaller details in high-ceiling frescoes. On the other hand, however, there are many or really innumerous artworks that are not only better to see in real, but their essence is the active, physical, bodily participation of the viewer. Just think of works like, just a few examples, like James Turrell, or Olafur Eliasson, or even a third example, Ragnar Kjartansson, one of the best contemporary Icelandic artists. So these cannot really be substituted in the real world. So as a conclusion, or a concluding remark, let me, however, also highlight the importance of the very reflection of the entire complex COVID experience on a meta level. Hence, putting all these and other issues on this meta level, analyzed in art and through art. A great example of such an attempt is the recently closed Taipei Biennial that unfortunately I did not have the occasion to visit, but I hope many of you have seen. I mean, those who live in this wonderful city. In an article in the art newspaper, one of the curators, the New York-based Taiwanese American writer Brian Kuan Wood, stated, I quote him, "People would rather forget the pandemic. It was very painful, but we are seriously overdue for some self-examination. With the understandable urge for the normal, still we must have learned something. COVID fragmented the social fabric, but brought the world together in a strange confinement, a scramble to stay alive." End of quote. And the reviewer of the biennial, Lisa Mobius, adds to this, and I quote her, "Rather like how COVID particles can decimate a host body long after an acute infection, the whole world seems to have political long COVID. Fissures predating the pandemic have only deepened since. Yet our shared trauma could provide a starting point for empathy." End of quote. So I agree with all this, and that all of this shall be done, and especially art in practically any of its form, perception and ways of consumption can have a key role in the process of getting a fuller picture. So regarding the fuller picture, let me just greet you with recent caricature from the New Yorker when this medieval knight is painting a self-portrait, but obviously he's in armor and he only sees through the grids of his helmet. So this will not be the full picture. We have to strive for a better, fuller picture. Thank you for it.
Thank you very much. 10 minutes presentation, very precise. Okay. So our next speaker, Professor Howard Shousen, who has a Chinese name, Xiu Haile, meaning repair of fix the joy of the ocean, who is Professor Emeritus of Philosophy, New York University, and now visiting Professor of Engineering Ethics in Beijing, and visiting research professor, Higher Education Research Institute, East China University of Science and Technology, Shanghai. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Professor Shousen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, everybody's been saying thank you, and I want to say thank you as well. But more than that, I want to say what a special experience it is to be with all of you. The warmth and the caring and the mutual idea of committed scholarship is really wonderful and restoring, and a very good event, I think, to have at the near end of this pandemic. I'm a philosopher, And the job of philosophers is not to tell us what we know, but to let you all know that we don't know much or know nothing. And our patron saint Socrates went so far as to declare that he only knew that he didn't know, and his vocation turned out to be asking questions. For what purpose? Maybe to shake things up a little bit, maybe to show people that habitual thinking is problematic. Many reasons, I think. But I'm going to try to be a little bit Socratic today in talking about the metaverse. Cultural metaverse and pandemic was not a title that I made up. It was sort of the topic I was given, and I thought, well, this is fascinating. So let me have a go. I began sort of by asking my friend ChatGPT to write a poem about the metaverse. And turns out, somewhat to my surprise, that the values expressed in this piece of doggerel are not so different from the sort of optimistic values we have about the metaverse and the future it may bring us. I think you can all read it, or should I read it? In realms unseen where data streams entwine, a digital realm, a metaverse divine. But even here, where virtual dreams take flight, pandemics echo, shadows in the bite. In lines of code, a virus finds its home, spreading swiftly through the networks it roams. Bits and bytes become the battleground where zeros and ones in chaos are bound. Avatars dance in pixelated halls while outside reality's grip tightens. It recalls the fragility of flesh, the breath of fear, in the metaverse, distant yet so near. Yet amidst the turmoil, connections thrive across screens and servers, humility strives. In the virtual expanse, we find our solace building, bridges of hope in digital palaces. For in the metaverse, where worlds collide, we find resilience, our spirits amplified. Pandemics may pass, but the bonds remain in the digital tapestry woven through pain. So let us navigate this dual domain with empathy, courage, and wisdom to gain. For in pandemics and metaverses entwined, humanity endures our spirits in line. That's a pretty good idea, right? So the pandemic, sort of a take in 1922, an announcement in New York that the pandemic was creating ultra convenience and forced isolation. Pandemic set the perfect stage for the metaverse to take off. It has created a society where social anxiety is on the rise and the desire for convenience is at an all-time high. I think in several of the talks that we heard yesterday, these two twin themes, the need for comfort, convenience, security of a certain sort, together with growing anxiety and fear of what the world is happening. We have become as a society accustomed to bring along because of the prolonged periods of isolation that COVID-19 has forced us into. Some of us, speaking from personal experience, have found solace in the silence and have turned inward to uncover the introverted parts of ourselves. The metaverse is by design meant to be used in isolation. This is sort of the theme I'm trying to understand. You don't need other people. You don't need other people in the metaverse. So, what is the metaverse and how does it relate to the world and life and the universe? And, COVID-19 is over, but maybe another pandemic is on the way. I've been reading about a new outbreak of avian flu. Yesterday, I read in the New York Times that a new variant of COVID, PK2, is poised to take off, with ground zero being my home state of New Jersey. We're moving into a situation where pandemics are going to be
more frequent, probably, more interruptive, more challenging, and the metaverse is going to seem like a venue that we can move into. And so this is a good idea. Now I'm going to talk about the metaverse as an artifact of contemporary technology, and I'm going to suggest that both the blessings and the perils of contemporary technology, in a way, are connected in the metaverse. As an earlier example, I remember that when, I actually do remember because I'm old enough, but I remember when Sputnik, the Russian first satellite, was launched. All sorts of excitement, but one of the dimensions of excitement was that, now we can get off this planet. It's an opportunity to escape life. So this is, in a sense, strange, but it's a sort of purported redemptive promise of technology. So, is the metaverse a replacement of nature? And I was very challenged by Bill McKibben's book, The End of Nature, and I recommend it to anybody who hasn't yet read it. Okay, so the term metaverse was coined in this novel by Neil Stevenson, and it's called Snow Crash. And Snow Crash refers to the screen that appeared on early Macintosh computers when things began to go wrong. And you would get all of this ill-defined white, static, and they called it a snow crash. So this became, in this novel, the metaphor for the metaverse, which was where you sort of got behind reality into a different domain, and it was an escape from a dystopia. This whole novel is a powerful dystopia. It's quite a brilliant book. Anyway, it presented the option of entering into the metaverse as a kind of enticing, almost narcotic experience, and people would disappear into there, and that would be it. Now, in June 2022, the global management consulting company McKinsey, sort of the bastion of techno-capitalism around the world, did their report on the metaverse, and their theme was value creation in the metaverse, and they saw it as a natural aspect of the evolution of the internet. It's going to take the new technologies, augmented reality, virtual reality, and other advanced digital technologies, and really give us an alternative place to develop and grow anything. But the features of the metaverse are supposed to be, one, a sense of immersion. So that means, we're leaving behind the rest of the world. Real-time interactivity, user agency. Is this real, or is this kind of an illusion? I mean, Shirley Turkle, in her first book on the impact of computing technology, talked about how young children were drawn to programming so much because they thought they had this amazing power. You just do something and you're creating something. It's very addictive. Ultimately, the metaverse will be platforms and devices that work seamlessly with each other. Kind of extreme interoperability. The possibility for thousands of people to react simultaneous. The quote we saw this morning, one person is of concern, a million is a statistic, something like this. It's going to change how we relate to each other if the vision of McKinsey goes forth. Now, a bit about plagues. We heard already about William McNeil's groundbreaking book that plagues are the products often of war and conflict and exploitation. We move into areas where we were not. We talked quite a bit yesterday about Albert Camus' analysis of the plague in North Africa. And what Camus was talking about wasn't really the medical issues, but the ways in which people began to lose trust or began to become suspicious or paranoid. It became, in a sense, primarily a spiritual problem. And that led me to think that there's something similar to what the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called the sickness unto death, a kind of misalignment or misrelationship of the self with the self. We're kind of at loose ends. We don't know where home is. We don't have our North Star. Now, we can't take Kierkegaard's analysis too far because he brings it into Christian theology very, very much, but it is a phenomenon that I think bears reflection on. The metaverse, of course, is, a concept. It's a space. It's not actual physical space. It's intellectual space or logical space or mathematical space or something. It reminded me of Descartes' division of the world into two entirely separate substances. One which was material, defined by the fact that it took up space, and the other which was just thinking. And it did not occupy space. And it was what it was, and he called it a thinking thing. And it was the only thing that we could be certain of. Now, the interaction between the body, my body or any body in the world, and me, this thinking thing, was almost impossible for Descartes to explain. And his explanation that he came up with really wasn't a very good one. Are we embracing a Cartesian definition of ourselves if we get pretty excited about the metaverse? Okay, a few takeaways from me. Questions, not explanations. I think we would agree that the metaverse is an imprecise and evolving concept. It's been used so many ways already at this conference, all of them good and appropriate, but it's an evolving concept. The structure of the metaverse and the agents and entities that populate it are logical or mathematical constructs. They're not flesh and blood folks. The absolute relationship or the relationship between living beings, natural world, pandemic diseases, and plagues becomes metaphorical, at least in the context of the metaverse. These representations may reveal the truth about actual living and natural beings, and in this way be able to offer guidance. In other words, the metaverse may provide a platform for research and understanding and reflection and so on. That's different than embracing it as a way of life. Theories that emerge need to be tested. In other words, their compelling presentation in the metaverse isn't sufficient to accept them. They need to be tested, verified, or using Popper's language, falsified, until we understand that they have some actual utility that's worthy. So thus the metaverse may be, I'm saying, a heuristic, sort of a ladder to get to someplace for addressing the complex issues that together contribute to the damages brought about by the pandemic and plague. And so that's where I stop. Obviously, I know nothing, as I promised, but I hope these questions were provocative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being so thoughtful to end on time, precisely.
Okay, the next speaker is Justina Lash.
Sure.
Which is closer?
Block.
Lap?
Block. Yes.
Lap? Oh, very good. Completely wrong.
Sorry.
So,
Let's proceed. Okay.
so she's the associate professor of McGill University, Montreal, Canada. She belongs to the Faculty of Art, Department of Social Work, also associate member of the Faculty of Medicine of what is called
Pediatrics,
department, development psychology.
Yes.
And she has long experience of real social work too.
Thank you very much. As others have done, Tony and your team, I'd like to express my gratitude for this invitation and being given this really interesting topic that was sent to me and really caused me to reflect on how I might be able to contribute to this dialogue over these 3 days. And so in doing so, I'm drawing on two contexts in my life. I'm a member of the board of directors of a health network in Montreal, and that is comprised of a tertiary care hospital, about 6 long-term care facilities, 2 rehabilitation centers, a number of day programs and research institutes, and I oversee the quality committee of the board, which to the management of the hospital reports to this committee regarding critical incidents. And so during COVID, as you can imagine, the critical incidents that were occurring in long-term care facilities and in the hospital were numerous. And so we were informed and debated about possibilities in relation to a response to them. During that time, I was also, during COVID, for a good chunk of it at least, I was Associate Dean of Student Affairs in the Faculty of Arts at McGill University. And so was involved in supporting the faculty and students to pivot, as we say, to remote learning. And so I'll be drawing a little bit on my experience as Associate Dean during that time in order to speak about this notion of psychosocial learning. So I come from Quebec, which is a province in the country of Canada. It's a province with a population of 8.75 million people. Had almost 1.45 or just a little over 0.45 million documented COVID cases. And as of May 11th, there were 20,031 deaths in that province attributed to COVID. So as an associate dean, I remember sitting in a meeting with the other associate deans and the dean on March 13th, where we were informed that to basically pack our bags and leave immediately. And we were closed, or we were to be closed at that time for just 10 days while we figured out what this all meant. As it turned out, we didn't return that semester. And in fact, the next year was delivered completely through remote learning. The following year was mostly remote, and in September of 2022, we returned to the classroom. So I'm going to speak to you about some of the things that we learned through the COVID experience, both in the hospital context and in the higher education context. I would say some of those things were revolutionary as opposed to evolutionary. Some of those things we are going to hang on to and keep and learn from going forward, and some of those things we're going to hopefully cast aside. In the context of the hospital, as the intensive care units and the emergency rooms were filled to capacity, the care teams were really forced to find other ways to deliver care. And one of the ways in which one of the greatest changes and greatest accomplishments was this. It was originally called COVID at home, and then it turned into hospital at home, and it's now called recovery at home. And this is the idea of heart surgery patients, patients being treated for COPD, pneumonia, urinary tract infections, cellulitis,
are sent home right after a acute procedure as opposed to remaining in hospital. And they're followed by a specialized team 24/7. They have access to a nurse 24/7 and to a physician, a team of specialists, depending on what the nature of their care is. And medical data that is, they're given either a wrist monitor or some kind of a chest pad or a clip on a finger where their blood pressure is monitored on a continuous basis. Their heart rate is monitored on a continuous basis, and using this kind of smartphone and monitoring devices, feedback is given to sent to the hospital remotely. And as of July 23rd, 410 patients had been through this program over an 18-month period, and they had saved 2,000 hospital day beds through, and obviously, 2,000 hospital day beds. So an evaluation was done of this program, and 100% of the patients, the participants said that they preferred the program to in-hospital care, and 93% approved of it, of the experience. So they were overwhelmingly satisfied. 4% that were invited to participate declined, and 90% said that they believed the program facilitated their recovery. Now, as is the case with any evaluation, it's important as to what questions you ask and what questions you don't ask. And certainly, it doesn't strike me as a very sophisticated evaluation, certainly, but asking about satisfaction is the important part of that. Another area where we noticed a change or another forced change that perhaps had some positive impacts was in the space that I do most of my research in, which is in children with developmental disabilities such as autism, intellectual disabilities, cerebral palsy, and so on. These are children that depend on rehabilitation for their care. They need access to speech and language therapists, to occupational therapists, to physiotherapists, because of their delays in receptive and expressive language, in finding gross motor function and sensory function and spatial function. And as you know, developmentally, there are important windows of opportunity for providing therapies to children that are important developmentally. So not receiving therapies during that time is problematic. So telerehabilitation was already a little bit of it emerging, but systems are very slow to change and adopt new ways of providing care. And of course, COVID forced that change. And using communication technology, they delivered these rehabilitation services to children and their families remotely. So the child and family would be at home. The therapist would be online, instructing the parents as to what to do. Prior to COVID, 4% of uptake regarding telerehabilitation, and during COVID, 70%. So as you can see, there was a huge adoption of this. And so Tatiana Obutsova did a systematic review of 55 studies internationally that on the use of telerehabilitation for children with different kinds of neurodiverse children, and found that 52.7% focused on childhood parent outcomes and found it to be just as effective as face-to-face in 51.4% of the outcomes, and more effective in 48.1% of the outcomes, and never detrimental or less effective, according to the systematic review. But actually, when you talk to parents and begin to hear from them as to what the experience, and to the clinicians, as to what the experiences were like of giving and receiving care, and I think this relates probably to the monitoring that's done through recovery at home, there were both benefits and challenges. Certainly from a benefits perspective, it's the idea of minimizing the exposure to risk through the infections that were circulating in hospitals at the time, reducing stress. Some children that are neurodivergent have difficulty with negotiating transitions. Certainly the child remained at home, got the therapy at home. You could involve other members of the family in the rehabilitation. and there wasn't an issue around generalizing from the clinical setting into the home setting, minimizing travel costs, maximizing convenience. Those are all the positives. But there were challenges as well, right? Things like keeping the child, like imagine this, you're a clinician saying, okay, parent, now try this with the child, and you're giving the parent instruction. The child is there, you're listening to the therapist telling you what to do, but you're also having to manage your child at the same time. Not easy, right? So keeping the child engaged whilst listening to the clinician was challenging. Self-doubt. Parents wondered whether they were doing a good enough job and whether the therapists, have they been in a clinical setting, would have been able to do it better. A lot of time spent trying to figure out the technical issues with the Zoom or the MS Teams or whatever technology was being used. Not all children interacted well with the therapist online. And often there was no preparation before the session about how to set up the environment at home to make it more successful by doing things like, let's find a space where you can close the door to minimize distractions, or wear a headphone so that you can listen to the therapist while you're managing your child. There was also a scoping review done of 12 Canadian studies, and this idea of lack of space in the home to provide care. Not everybody's got that kind of space, particularly those that are coming from lower socioeconomic status backgrounds. Interruptions were common. Scheduling challenges when parents were both working at home and having to do the therapy on top of their work schedules. Zoom fatigue. And I think we need to talk about something called loss of spontaneity. There's something about the medical team coming into the room, or a child being in a clinical setting or in a rehabilitation setting where things happen randomly or spontaneously. And it's through those random and spontaneous interactions that things are learned. And so you lose that unplanned nature of learning. At the university, okay, I'm going to just pivot to, or switch over to the second context. McGill University has 11 faculties, 13 schools, almost 40,000 students, 3,476 academic staff. So on March 3rd, Quebec had their first confirmed COVID case, and it came to the tertiary care center that I'm on the board of. March 12th, there were 17 confirmed cases. March 13th, the schools, colleges, and universities were ordered closed until March the 30th. All day-to-day operations were suspended. March 17th, a public health emergency was declared by the provincial premier, and March 29th, a few days after the 10 days, the state of emergency was extended. So as I mentioned before, all of the rest of those terms were remote. So what did we learn? Well, when we learned we could fulfill our social mandate, we could keep the students engaged. Well, we could keep them present. I don't know if they were engaged, but they were present in their learning. We demonstrated our capacity to adapt to this revolutionary change. We integrated a greater use of technology than we ever imagined before. People who had never learned how to use a computer, how to use Zoom, instructors I'm talking about, were now using Zoom to deliver their lectures. There were flexible study and work routines. We used the flipped classroom where we asked students to do the readings ahead of time, and so use the actual lecture time for small group interaction and discussion, using case-based learning. These are all wonderful things that happened with the introduction of COVID and the use of technology. Students were spending less time commuting, more time at home with their families, and there were challenges. And I would say the challenges were quite significant. Teaching over time became teaching to a blank screen. We were not allowed to require the students to turn on their cameras. So it was less than interesting to deliver lectures to a blank screen of students who were themselves very, in many cases, quite disengaged. There was unequal access to technology for remote learning. And then, of course, there were the international students that had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning for a 2 p.m. lecture. There was a lack of motivation, lack of engagement, and the students were, felt very isolated. The whole experience of coming on campus, getting involved in orientation, meeting your people, none of that happened as easily. And of course, we were being told, and I was certainly telling to the instructors, to the faculty, the mental health issues for students were quite, they're significant at the best of times, but they were even more significant during COVID. And so we were literally being told, be easy, be understanding, cut them some slack, change how you're grading students. And so as a result, I would say the grades were inflated. The grades of students coming out of high school, applying into university were inflated, and our own grades were inflated. And of course, there were issues around academic integrity. How did we know that when we were delivering an exam, that students were not cheating and weren't sitting across from one another or texting one another the answers? We had no way, and those kinds of methods for monitoring academic integrity were, at least in our case, in McGill's case, particularly limited towards the beginning. And the other thing I think that we lost was had to do with onboarding new colleagues or employees. How do you onboard somebody who's just coming in to be an assistant professor at McGill University? Normally we welcome them, we show them things, we bring them around, we introduce them into our culture. Well, what kind of culture? It was difficult to even capture what the essence of that culture was. So that's, and same with employees. So I think the key question from and I've heard bits and pieces of this as others have presented, but I think one of the greatest losses for during COVID was the relational, the ethics of care, the relational component. It was very difficult to maintain that. In fact, we were interviewing students for a study recently, and a student agreed to participate in a study. It was a study on educational upward mobility, and the student was answering questions like in single sentences, and actually eventually expressed more comfort in responding to our questions digitally. That it would be more interesting and easier for this student to text us their responses to questions and to write out their response than it was for them to talk to us. So is this the thin edge of the wedge? Is this what we're creating for within our students using the digital technologies? That are we losing the relational capacity, our ability to demonstrate care, to experience caring, both in the healthcare context, in the spontaneity, in the relationships that are established with health professionals in the physical space, in the telerehabilitation space, as well as in the educational space. Thank you.